What was said about you was not supposed to reach you. That is the first thing I need you to understand before we go anywhere else with this. The conversation that happened, the one I am going to walk you through in full detail today, was never designed to find its way into your awareness. It was spoken in the specific confidence of people who believed completely and without question that what moves between them stays between them, that the walls of their private exchange were solid enough to contain what was being said about you without a single word of it ever arriving at your door. But here you are, and here I am, with every layer of it. Stay with me, Virgo, because what I received for you today arrived with the kind of clarity and detail that I do not take lightly. And by the time we reach the end of this reading, you are going to understand something about your situation, about this person, and about yourself that is going to permanently change the way you see all three. I want to tell you how this message came through, because the way it arrived tells you something important about the nature of what is being revealed. It did not come softly. It did not arrive as a gentle impression or a broad, energetic brushstroke that I then shaped into something readable. It came through the way truth comes through when it has been suppressed for too long and finally finds an opening with force, with urgency, with the specific insistence of something that has been waiting for exactly the right moment to break the surface and is no longer willing to wait. I sat down to read for you today, and before I had fully settled into your energy, before I had even finished the process of tuning in, something arrived, a scene, a conversation. Two people in a space that felt private and contained, speaking about you with the unguarded honesty that only emerges when people believe they are completely safe from being overheard. They were not safe. And what they said, Virgo, is the reason you are here right now. Because on some level, even before this reading confirmed it, some part of you already knew that something had been said. Some part of you has been carrying the faint, uncomfortable, impossible to fully dismiss awareness that words about you have been exchanged in a space you were not invited into. Your intuition has been tapping you on the shoulder about this for a while now, telling you that something was moving beneath the surface of a dynamic you thought you understood. Your intuition was right. It always is. Let me trace this from its beginning, because understanding where this conversation started is essential to understanding everything that followed. There is a person, someone who has occupied a significant position in your awareness, whether currently or recently, whether through proximity or through the specific weight of whatever connection exists or existed between you. This is not a stranger. This is someone whose name you know, whose presence in your life has mattered in one form or another. Someone who has had access either to your physical space or to information about you or to the version of yourself that you offer to people who have earned some level of trust. This person made a choice, not an impulsive one, not something born in the heat of a moment that they later regretted before the words had even finished leaving their mouth. A deliberate choice to take what they knew about you, what they had observed, what they had been told, and carry it to someone else. To open a conversation about you in a space where you had no voice, no presence, no ability to represent yourself or offer context, or simply be present as a full human being rather than as a subject being discussed. They went to a third party and they talked. I want to speak very specifically now about what was said, because this is the part that came through with the most vivid clarity. And I want to honor that clarity by delivering it without softening it beyond recognition. The conversation began with something that presented itself as concern, as care, as the kind of sharing that people justify to themselves by framing it as looking out for someone or processing something difficult or simply needing to talk through a situation with someone they trust. The framing was generous. The tone was measured. The opening of the conversation would not have alarmed anyone listening because it wore the costume of genuine feeling quite convincingly. But beneath the costume, something else was operating. Because what this person was actually doing, what the energy underneath the surface language of the conversation reveals, was not processing or sharing or seeking support. It was positioning. They were constructing a version of you in the mind of the third party carefully, with the specific selection of details and the specific omission of other details that produces a particular impression rather than an accurate one. They were not lying outright. That is the sophisticated part of what was done and the part that makes it both more difficult to name and more important to name. They were curating, selecting the pieces of your story that served a particular narrative and presenting them as the whole picture, leaving out the context that would have complicated the story they were telling, omitting the parts of you that would have made the listener see you differently, more fully, more fairly. It was a portrait, but it was a portrait with pieces missing. And the pieces that were missing were the ones that looked most like you. I need to pause here for a moment because something is coming through very specifically for a significant portion of you watching this, and I cannot move past it without addressing it directly. For some of you, what was said in this conversation was not simply unflattering or incomplete, it was damaging. There was information shared that this person had no right to share, private things. Things that were given to them in a context of trust that they did not honor. Things that you would never have imagined finding their way into a conversation with this particular third party because the trust you extended when you shared them felt solid, felt deserved. It was not deserved, at least not in the way you believed it was. And I want to say something about that very carefully because I know how it lands. The violation of having private information about yourself shared without your consent, without your knowledge, without even the basic dignity of being asked is one of the more specific and deeply personal kinds of betrayal. It is not the same as being gossiped about in general terms. It is the specific wound of having something you offered from a vulnerable place weaponized in a space you cannot access or defend. You are allowed to name that as a wound. You are allowed to feel the full weight of it without minimizing it or moving too quickly toward the part where you are supposed to be okay. Feel it first. The rest of the reading will hold until you do. Now, let me tell you about the third party. Because their role in this is not neutral, and they deserve to be seen clearly in this reading. This is someone who listened, who received everything that was said about you without pushing back, without asking the questions that would have complicated the one-sided portrait being painted, without offering you the basic courtesy of the absent that any fair-minded person extends to someone who is being discussed in their absence. They absorbed it, and in absorbing it without resistance or question, they gave the conversation a validity it did not earn. They became the audience that made the performance real. But here is what I also feel about this third party, and it is something I think you need to hear. They are not entirely comfortable with what happened. There is something in their energy, a discomfort, a residue of unease that has been sitting with them since this conversation took place. Because somewhere beneath the surface of their reception of what was said about you, something in them registered that the picture was not complete, that the person being described did not fully match the energy they associate with you directly or indirectly. That discomfort is information, and it is going to matter going forward. I want to speak now to the shock piece of this reading because the title promises it and the energy delivers it. What was said that carries the quality of shock is not necessarily the most dramatic thing in the conversation. It is not the loudest or the most obviously damaging detail. The shock is in the source. The specific nature of what will shock you when you receive the full picture of this conversation is not what was said, but who said it. The particular combination of who this person is to you, what they represented in your understanding of your own relationships and your own circle, and what they chose to do with that position of proximity or trust, that combination is where the shock lives. Because you did not see this coming from this direction, you may have had general awareness that something was off. You may have felt the particular unease of someone who senses that not everything in their relational landscape is as it appears. But this specific person as the source of this specific conversation, that is what is going to land with the breathtaking, disorienting, stomach-dropping quality that the word shock actually means. And I want to prepare you for that landing without taking away the truth of it. Because the truth of it, as uncomfortable as it is also clarifying in a way that nothing else could be. It closes a question you have been carrying. It ends an uncertainty that has been costing you energy to maintain. And it gives you information that, painful as it is to receive, is ultimately more useful to your life than the comfortable fiction of not knowing would have been. Does this feel like something you have been sensing beneath the surface of a relationship that has felt slightly off recently? Have you noticed a shift in energy from someone that you could not quite explain or pin down? Have you felt the specific unease of someone who suspects something without having the evidence to confirm it? Let me know in the comments. I want to know how this is landing for you, which part of this reading is sitting most specifically in the center of your chest, because your experience of this is part of what makes the reading complete. Let me speak now to what happens after, because the reading does not end with the revelation of what was said. It continues into the territory of what this revelation makes possible for you. And this is the part that I want you to hold on to as we move toward the close of this message. The conversation that happened about you, the one that was never supposed to reach you, is finding its way to your awareness for a reason, not to simply wound you or to add another layer to whatever you have already been navigating, but because your life cannot move into its next chapter while you are still operating from an incomplete understanding of the landscape you are standing in. There are decisions ahead of you, choices about who to trust, who to invest in, who to allow access to the parts of you that are real and tender and genuinely valuable. And those decisions, made with full information, look very different from those same decisions made with the incomplete picture you have been working from. The universe is giving you the full picture, not out of cruelty, out of the specific kind of love that trusts you with the truth because it knows you are strong enough to receive it and wise enough to use it well. Virgo, I want to speak to your character in this moment because it is relevant and it is beautiful and it deserves to be named. Your first instinct when you receive this full picture is not going to be revenge. It is not going to be a campaign or a confrontation or a performance of justified anger for an audience. I know this about you. I feel it in the deep, grounded, integrity-rooted quality of your energy. your first instinct is going to be something much quieter and much more powerful than any of those things. It is going to be clarity, a settling into the truth of what is, a quiet, firm, unshakable realignment of your understanding of your own landscape and your own relationships. And from that clarity, a series of private decisions that rearrange your life in ways that serve your actual well-being rather than your prior assumptions about who deserves to be where in your world. These decisions will not be announced. They will not be accompanied by drama or confrontation or any of the noise that lesser responses would generate. They will simply happen quietly, with a specific precision that is your signature, the same precision that makes you extraordinary at everything you apply it to. And the people who are affected by those decisions, the ones who find that their access to you has quietly but permanently changed, will understand without being told exactly what shifted and why. Because the quality of your silence when you have decided something is itself a message that requires no translation. As I close this reading, I want to leave you with the piece of this that I feel most strongly and that I believe is the true heart of everything that came through today. You have not been wrong about yourself, not about your worth, not about the quality of what you offer the people in your life, not about the standard you hold yourself to and the standard you deserve to receive in return. You have not been wrong about any of it. What was said about you in that conversation does not define you. It does not accurately represent you. It does not touch the actual truth of who you are in any meaningful way because it was constructed by someone who either could not or chose not to see you fully. And a portrait painted by someone who is not looking at the full subject is not a portrait. It is a projection. What I see when I sit with your energy is not what was described in that room. What I see is someone whose depth and whose light and whose extraordinary capacity for both precision and genuine warmth is so present and so undeniable that it makes the incompleteness of that portrait almost absurd in comparison. You are so much more than what was said, and the people who matter, the ones whose vision is clear and whose presence in your life is rooted in something real, they know it, they see it, and no conversation held in your absence, no matter how carefully constructed or confidently delivered, can change what they know. The truth of who you are has never needed anyone's permission to exist. It simply needed your continued willingness to be it, to keep showing up as yourself, fully and without apology, in the face of whatever was being said in rooms you were not in. You have been doing that every single day with a faithfulness to your own integrity that is genuinely remarkable. And that faithfulness, Virgo, is your protection, your real protection, not against being talked about or being misrepresented or being the subject of conversations you did not consent to, but against being diminished by any of it, because you cannot diminish someone who knows who they are, and you know exactly who you are. Let that be enough. Let that be everything, because in truth it always has been. If this reading landed somewhere real for you today, please share it with a Virgo who needs to feel this energy, and leave me a comment below telling me how this sat with you, what it confirmed, what it named that you have been carrying without the words for it. I read everything you share with me, every word, every story. I carry your energy long after this video ends. Until next time, Virgo, trust what you know, protect what you carry, and never let anyone else's conversation about you become the conversation you have with yourself. You are the author of your own truth, and no one else gets that pen.